So here's my new segment. I'm going to try and do this once a week at least, and if not, just post them up as soon as I can. It's called Underused Cards number 1. Or Underused Cards. This is my new series, Underused Cards. So I'm going to talk about cards that just don't see any play and should really have... They have so much potential, but no one is looking at them. So I'm going to start off talking about Morphing Jar. This isn't the card of the week, but this is a good reference point. Morphing Jar's ability is a flip effect that when it is flipped, both players discard their hands, and then both players draw 5 new cards. Dark Worlds, Fableds, and occasionally E-Heroes have a broken opportunity with these. Morphing Jar used to be a deck that was close to a staple, but since Dark Worlds and Fables came out, it seems that Morphing Jar has been limited to only a handful of decks. I myself run Morphing Jar in my E-Heroes because I do waste a lot of resources with Super Poly and stuff like that. But Dark Worlds get the most abusability out of it. And Fables, of course. Now, the one I am talking about today is Morphing Jar number 2. It's more like a, situational version of Morphing Jar. Morphing Jar guarantees you and your opponent 5 cards. Morphing Jar number 2 is a bit different. Its effect is when it's flipped, return all monster cards on the field to their respective decks and shuffle them. You and your opponent then pick up cards until both of you have the same number of monster cards that were returned to each deck. Special summon the level 4 or lower monsters to the field in face-down defense position. The rest of the cards are picked up and discarded to the graveyard. There are a lot of things you can do with this card. Let me explain how it fares against other decks. We're going to use Marshmallow as an example of your monster. That way we can have a reference points to show how you can abuse Morphing Jar number 2 as well as tricking your opponent into wasting valuable resources. The first example is very simple. Cards that can't be sent to the graveyard due to their effects, or cards that can't be destroyed by battle more than once, or by card effect more than once. For example, Utopia, Wind of Zenmanes, Gachu Gangetsu, Galen Duo, Marshmallow, Spirit Reaper, and all sorts of cards like that. Now, the concept is that if they're attacking your Morphing Jar number 2, because Morphing Jar number 2 was the target, it's destroyed. But everything else goes back into the deck or the extra deck. Then you summon as many monsters as you possibly can of that that are 4-star or lower. Everything else goes to the graveyard. So this clears the field of these annoying monsters, especially when they have big stuff that's Exceed related. Morphing Jar number 2 is really good against decks that are very high level oriented. By that, I'm talking about decks like this. The Forbidden Chalice, Forbidden Lands type decks that run like Beast King Barbaros, Ancient Gear Guadahitron Dragon, or Gadgetron Dragon, if you're a fan of Mason, and high level monsters. The way that Morphing Jar is so abusable against these, along with Dragon decks, is that they share a similar trait. Their whole concept of being a deck is to get out high-level monsters that normally wouldn't be easy to summon, and then using their attack or abilities to get out more high-level monsters and get field control. Morphing Jar number 2 completely says shut up to them. Its ability will send all of their high-level monsters back into the deck along with any other monsters that they have on the field, and they'll start having to pick up and send cards or discard cards to the graveyard until they can match their high-level monster count with a low-level monster count. Now, for decks like this, that might be a little bit easier, but for decks like Heretics or Hopeless or even, just any decks that run this engine, pretty much, except I think Dragonides, they also have a hard time getting over Morphing Jar number 2. I've seen people mill about 20 to 30 cards in a deck like this before they get anything good. Because in Heretics, all of it is 5 and higher. In Hopeless Dragon, I haven't really seen anyone run Hopeless, but I have seen people run Chaos Dragon. And if I'm correct, Eclipse Wyvern does not get its effect if it's flipped. But just sending back this stuff is great. Stardust can't negate it because it's not destroying it. It's sending them back to the deck. Shooting Star can't get over it. A lot of things cannot get over this card. They go back to the deck, and I haven't seen anyone run Red Eyes Wyvern that much either, so it's very interesting for that because they're wasting resources. One deck that I really like to talk about, or two actually, that seem to have a similar concept are Gladiator Beasts and Hero Beat. I'm not talking about regular E-Heroes, I'm talking about specifically Hero Beat. These seem to have a big disadvantage against Morphing Jar number 2. The reason for it is that Morphing Jar number 2 is going to make their 4-star monsters, even Gladiator Beasts, go back to the deck. The best thing is that Morphing Jar number 2 makes them summon in defense, not in attack. So your opponent swings with, let's say, a field of Gladiator Beasts. Laquari swings first. Because Laquari swings, but it's still the battle phase, all of their GBs go back to their deck, and now they have to set all of their GBs face down. I believe that you have to reveal what it is to your opponent, so you'll already get a heads up of what it is. Hero Beat is the deck that does not fare well against this, but Omni Heroes fare extremely well with Morphing Jar number 2. The difference between Hero Beat and Omni Heroes is that I run Omni Heroes. Omni Heroes rely on a high monster count. Mine relies on about 23 monsters. All 4-star or lower, and all very useful within each other. Hero Beat runs about 9 to 12 monsters, 3 of them being Neosalius, 1 of them being Honest, 1 being Stratos, usually 1 to 2 being Ocean, and the rest up to Fate. 1's usually a Heat also. So they do run a 4-star monster count also. The thing that makes these two differ is the monster count themselves. You have a lot of options when you run Omni Hero, because you're just sending stuff back and getting it out. Whereas Hero Beat sends back their few monsters and now has to mill constantly all their spells, traps, and everything else that helps them get a good field present. I've seen people mill 40 cards, well, about 35 cards, just because they're trying to set up stuff. It's really nice because Hero Beat does have a big fusion field, so even if they Ab-Zero your field, Ab-Zero misses timing, I believe, because Morphing Jar and Zero go off at the exact same time, because Zero is being sent back, Morphing Jar already hit Grave, so if you don't have anything, you just send back their Zero, and now they didn't get any targets, and now you get to see what they're doing. You get to see what they set face down. So you get control over the situation. Finally, the most broken part about this card is that they're not sent to the graveyard. They are discarded to the graveyard. So as you're picking them up, oh no, I picked up a Grapha. Oh no, I picked up a, let's say, a gold. Oh, there's my Brow. Okay, set Brow. Graph ability, pop, and let's say I had like 5 monsters on the field, or 3. Let's say I had 3. So, let's say I had Grapha, and a useless Utopia. I don't know why I'd have this field and have Morphing Jar number 2, but this is just an example. Let's say my opponent has huge field control, or like a stall field. Flip Morphing Jar number 2. Oh, well that's Morphing Jar, but flip Morphing Jar number 2. Send all my stuff back to the deck. So Utopia, if it wasn't destroyed, goes back to the extra deck. Great, now I can use its ability again. Graphas go back to the deck. Now I have to pick up until I get 3 cards. Okay, Brow, that's great. Send Silva, oh, to the graveyard, special summon. Send Snow to the summon. Grapha, oh, pop one of your cards. Grapha, pop one of your cards. Brow, set again. So you already have Grapha in graveyard now. You have 2 Brow, 1 Snow, and you got 1 Silva or Gold off of that also. So this is great for Dark Worlds, Fabled, and Omni Heroes. Excuse me. I hope this has been useful. I did this video like 4 times. This is the one I feel like is the most correct and most helpful. So give me your opinions of Morphing Jar number 2, and if you want, put a situation where it's been used for you or against you in a helpful or hurtful way. Let me know in the comment box below. Thumbs up, like,